Hello and welcome into the Dave Campbell's College Football Podcast. I'm your host, Carter Yates. That is senior college writer Mike Craven, and we are on to week 4. It still feels crazy to say. Going to be a third of the way through a 12-week regular season. Craven, this is a big week in Texas college football. Can you break it down for me?
Yeah, kind of a judgment week, I think, as you called it in the recap podcast. We're going to learn a lot about the programs in the state of Texas. It's been a great start so far, specifically at the Power 4 level. A lot of wins. I have they are 26-12 overall, the 13 programs in the state of Texas. 3 of those losses are Sam Houston. 5 more of those losses are to other programs inside the state. So been a really good start to the year. But this week we learn a lot. Texas Tech goes to Utah. Baylor hosts Arizona State. SMU and TCU play against each other. At the G5 level, we get to figure out what North Texas is, going on the road against Army. And I think the UTSA trip to Colorado State will tell us a little bit more about a Roadrunners team that has not beat an FBS program yet this year. So not every team is playing. There are some kind of blowover games like Texas State Nichols, but even UTEP ULM is going to tell us a lot about that program. So a fun week where we kind of get to solidify, crystallize some opinions, whereas so far in the year, it feels like for most of the teams, it's still a wait and see type approach.
And one of the biggest games of this weekend, the Iron Skillet, the last one for now between TCU and SMU. We got a full 30-minute preview of that game coming up at the back half of the show with Billy Embody, who covers SMU for On3, and Jamie Plunkett, who covers TCU for 247 Sports. So if you're wanting the Iron Skillet preview, that is at the back half. We are not going to discuss it until then because we go on and on and on. Great conversation with those guys. So full preview of that game coming up. Let's talk, me and you, Craven, about Texas Tech. Number 17, Texas Tech is taking their first test of the season, I think, against 3-0 Utah, which is number 16 in the nation. They travel to Utah. Utah is favored by 3.5 points.
Yeah, going to be a really good football game. I think it's going to be the first time we find out about Utah as well. A lot has been made of the Utes the last few weeks after that win against UCLA. New Mexico beat UCLA by 3 or 4 touchdowns.
Yeah, New Mexico just fired their coach like 2 games in the year.
Right. They should give Jason Eck that job. This is a side tangent. I think if you're an FCS head coach and you beat an FBS team and they fire their coach that same week, you should be able to take the job right away. Like it should be your job, like a WW. You should at least be able to turn it down, like the first right of refusal.
It's like King of the Hill.
So I think these are 2 teams that are in Big 12 contention. I think the winner of this game will become the favorite, at least the betting favorite, to win the Big 12 alongside maybe Iowa State. But Iowa State's another program where they have a big win under their belt, at least on paper. But what is Kansas State? And so just a wide open conference, excited to see Texas Tech finally get tested. They've looked tremendous. They've been the most impressive team in the state in terms of just week to week performances, but it's hard to ignore who they've played.
Yeah, the Red Raiders, the stats are insane. I mean, number 1 in the Big 12 with 58 points per game. They're putting up 602.7 yards per game. Some teams, it takes till mid-season to get that number. And Craven, you've got a feature up on TexasFootball.com now about Texas Tech offensive coordinator Mac Leftwich. This is kind of his first huge test too. It looks great with who they played so far, but they haven't played a team like Utah yet.
Yeah, he interviewed at Houston. He interviewed at Utah, so he could have easily been on the other sideline here. The Leftwich hire, I think, was one of the best moves Joey McGuire's made since he's been at Texas Tech. Has some roots in the air raid, so it fits what West Texas likes. It fits what Lubbock wants to do. I think if you're the head coach at Tech, you can't bring in an I formation guy, right? You gotta throw it around the yard. But what Leftwich doesn't get enough credit for is the creativity in the run game and how balanced they are. And that's allowed Baron Morton to really thrive. He doesn't have to throw the ball 60 times, 50 times a game. You get to see the balance. They get some man coverage on the outside because of the run game. But this one feels like a Baron Morton passing attack deal. Like if Texas Tech is to win this football game, it's because they're able to block Utah, which I think is going to be the key here is can the Texas Tech revamped offensive line, which has looked really good, can they take a step forward against a Utah defensive front that is always very good and a very sound Utah defensive unit, typically under Whittingham. And so this is going to be the first test for Baron Morton in this offense that's looked really explosive. To me, the keys are to try to keep some balance, to be able to run the ball with some success. And then you just got to keep Baron Morton upright, because you feel like if you give Baron Morton time and these wide receivers time, that's an advantage for Texas Tech.
I think this is the game where I could have to eat my words on Baron Morton if he just balls out in this one, because I've been on record not a huge Baron Morton fan. Love his leadership, love how he's the steward of the program, but think he is injury prone and leaves a little bit on the table. I think the Colorado game just sticks in my head so much from last year. But if he can this year go on the road against a Utah team that is salty, they're second in the Big 12, allowing 8.3 points per game. This could be like the Baron Morton legacy game right here.
Yeah. Opponents so far, only 3 times have they gotten to the red zone against Utah.
That sounds like a fake stat.
Right.
That's like the Ryan Wingo has 3 catches stat that I thought was fake from the Texas game.
So this Utah defense has been really, really good. They're obviously really good in the trenches, typically an older team because of the Mormon influence there in Salt Lake City. Obviously, you get some older players, some grown men who have families and mortgages. But I think the biggest difference for Texas Tech this year is they also have that. They also have some grown men who have played a lot of college football, who are older, who are developed on both sides of the line of scrimmage. So typically Texas Tech plays against a Utah and you go advantage Texas Tech at the skill positions, advantage Utah in the trenches. I'm not sure that advantage exists as much for Utah this year. So I think Texas Tech is pretty confident going into this one. I like their skill position players, Caleb Douglas, Coy Aiken. Tight end's been a really solid spot for the Red Raiders this year. So I'm fascinated to see this offense that has had no resistance at all. They've been able to do exactly what they wanted to do for the first 3 weeks. They will be stopped. Like, they're not going to put up 50 on Utah. I think we can confidently say they're not going to have 600 yards of total offense. They're not going to put up 50 points against this Utah team. There's going to be some adversity for the first time this year. How does Leftwich's unit handle that? And how do they adjust to an adjustment? Right? Like, Arkansas Pine Bluff could have had the script for Texas Tech and not been able to stop it.
You could have John Madden coaching Arkansas Pine Bluff. It's not going to happen.
Right. Same with Oregon State down the line. Like, they weren't able to make any adjustments and force Texas Tech to get to their second or third pitch. Utah, at least on paper and theory, should be able to force Texas Tech to do some different stuff, to get out of their comfort zone. What does that look like for the Red Raiders? I think that's a big question mark for Saturday.
And on the defensive side, how much does Utah quarterback Devon Dampier scare you if you're a Texas Tech fan?
Yeah, this has been a thing all offseason that I've wondered about. Is I'm always curious about these FCS quarterbacks that deal a lot with their athleticism, like how they adjust up, because does the athleticism hold? And so far against inferior competition, it has. They've put up a lot of points. Utah, not known for being the most explosive offense in the world, they're averaging 45.7 points per game. So they're scoring a lot. It does feel like they've kind of turned a new leaf in what they want to do offensively, to kind of let that go and not be so much 20-17 old school Utah beating up on the Pac-12. But I think Texas Tech has the defensive line, possibly the best defensive line in the Big 12, to really test that. And if they can keep him in the pocket and make him a one-dimensional passer, I think that's advantage Texas Tech, and that's one of the keys to this game.
He did have, Dampier did, the biggest no, yes play. Did you see that floating around on it? Where he basically winds up to throw the ball, throws it 20 yards behind him, picks it up, and throws an absolute laser in the back corner of the end zone. He's going to be fun either way. He could be fun bad or fun good. I don't know which one he is yet.
He definitely got some moxie. He's definitely a gamer. But if you're the Red Raiders, to that point, your goal here is to get him to make a mistake. And if this game is as close and as tightly contested as we all think it's going to be, if these teams are as evenly matched as we think, it's going to come down to the quarterback who makes more mistakes. I think Morton plays within himself a little bit more, and that could be a way that the Red Raiders get an advantage here in this game, because you can steal a possession or two for that defense. If you're this good offensively, that could be the big difference.
Okay, Utah's favored by 3.5. What are you taking, Craven?
Early in the week, I'm leaning Texas Tech in the points. I would take Utah in the points. I think this is just one of those evenly coin flip games, and so you go ahead and you take the underdog. Texas Tech has not been historically all that great on the road under Joey McGuire. I feel like they're 6-11 going into this game, but they were able to win a couple last year on the road against pretty solid teams. So I think I'm leaning Texas Tech here. The matchup I'm really excited to watch is the Texas Tech edge rushers against the Utah offensive tackles, who, might be the best set of offensive tackles in the country. If you're David Bailey, if you're Romello Height, even like a Lee Hunter in the middle, if the Texas Tech defensive line, this is what you paid all that money for, right? Like this, what's Mad Men, where it's like, that's what the money is for.
Yes.
Like this is the game where you get the return on investment, kind of how we saw with A&M against Notre Dame. They got the return on the investment of the wide receivers, and that won them a game on the road against the Fighting Irish that kind of changed the tenor of that program. I think if you're the Red Raiders, you've invested so much in the lines of scrimmage, specifically to play against a team like Utah. Let's see if it works out.
Yeah, it feels like the favored by 3.5 is just because they're the home team.
Yeah,
it seems like a pretty much a coin flip game.
And Utah's a tough place to play. The nice thing for Texas Tech is this is a 10 a.m. local kick.
If this was at night, that's really tough.
If this was at night, I'm going the Utes, since it's going to be a sleepy morning. I don't know if I'm picking Texas Tech to win outright, but if you're giving me 3.5, I think Texas Tech is really good. We'll see if they are.
Okay, another huge Big 12 matchup. Baylor hosting Arizona State at 6:30 p.m. on Fox. Baylor is favored by 2.5 points. And Craven, you're going to be in the building for this one. What's your excitement level for this game?
Pretty excited for it. I feel like I am riding on the Baylor roller coaster along with the fan base. I was on Baylor through most of the offseason. They lose to Auburn. I jump off of that ship. You watch the first 3 quarters against SMU, and you're like, holy crap, they're going to be 2-4 to start the season again. Is Dave Aranda even going to make it to the end of the year? They come back and beat SMU, and you're like, yeah, this team could win the Big 12. And so this feels like another one of those games where you get a true data point on what this team is going to be. And I feel like we know what Baylor is this year. Great offense, bad defense. Let's see where it evens out. Can Sawyer Robertson and this offense carry them to wins like the one against Arizona State, which they'll need to go play for the Big 12 championship game. So feels like a hugely important game, obviously, for the 2025 Baylor Bears. It also feels like a hugely important game for just the tenure of Dave Aranda and the confidence this fan base will have of him to get back to winning a Big 12 championship like they did in 2021.
Did you see the Bruce Feldman report on The Athletic that Dave Aranda could be reached out to by UCLA as their potential next head coach? He's
a California guy, and if you're Aranda and you want to restart the clock, it wouldn't be the worst thing. I mean, you can sell it as a move to the Big Ten. I think UCLA is a seller job. They just don't have the money and the finances and the backing to be big time. But if you get the right coach, sometimes that gets the donors to dust off their pocketbook. I would think that's mostly an agent getting the name out there to kind of, hey, like other teams want this guy. You can't not want this guy. But I think Baylor's the better job. Definitely an easier route to the playoff right now through the Big 12 than you do trying to be the 5th best team in the Big 10.
Well, it was also puzzling, too, because it's like the side of the ball Aranda is in charge of is not the reason they're winning. I mean, it's Sawyer Robertson, the quarterback, who is second in the nation with 1,070 passing yards through 3 games. He only trails Syracuse's Steve Angeli by 2 yards right now. He could lead the nation in passing yards at the end of this year, and he might have to for them to be good.
I got one for you, Carter. How many points does Baylor have to score on Saturday to win this football game?
38.
Yeah, I'm trying to look up what the over and under was real quick, but my phone, every time you need technology to work for you, it goes slow. So
there was a new iPhone that came out too, so my battery is getting nuked.
Oh, that's a good point. It's the Apple conspiracy theory where they're trying to convince you to get a new phone here. Let's see. The over under is 60.5. Baylor's -2.5. So that's a 31-29 type projected score. I'm with you. I don't think 31 points wins this one for Baylor. Maybe it's shell shock from watching Arizona State's offense play against Texas State's defense last week. But Sam Leavitt and those wide receivers, specifically Jordan Tyson, like going into the year, the Baylor secondary was the biggest question mark for the Bears. And I think the way Auburn ran the football made people believe that it's the run defense that's the biggest question mark. But the reason Auburn was able to run the ball so well is because Baylor refused to come out of like a cover 2 or quarters because they were so scared of their secondary against Auburn. Arizona State doesn't care what coverage you're going to play. They're going to throw the ball, and they're going to throw the ball to their talented wide receivers. I don't think Baylor stops them. I think they got to score 40. I think this is like an SMU type deal where if you want to win this game, you get the first team to 40 is going to win it.
Well, then also, even if Sam Levitt isn't throwing the ball, we saw what he could do last week running, the spins and hops and jukes. Like, he was moving in ways that I haven't seen quarterbacks since like Johnny Manziel move out there. And I'm not saying he is Johnny Manziel, but I'm saying he had Johnny Manziel-esque type plays. And Baylor, if you couldn't handle Jackson Arnold running, like, Sam Levitt is just as good, if not better, at running the football.
Yeah, I don't think Arizona State's offensive line is as good. That Auburn group's probably going to have 3 NFL draft picks when it's all said and done up front. And so I think the defensive line has a better chance here. But I don't think the Baylor defense has much of a chance to stop the run. And so if you're Baylor, I think your goals are to just go outscore them or to try to use Bryson Washington in that run game enough to slow the game down, kind of steal a couple of possessions. But I think if you're Baylor, you just do your thing, try to go score 40 points and win it. And I think that's got to be their strategy all season.
Are you confused why Baylor is favored by 2.5? Because I am a little confused. And when I am confused about a spread as to why like a team is favored, I just have to bet them because Vegas knows more than me.
I believe it's because the last time we saw Arizona State on the road, they were losing to Mississippi State, which was the worst SEC team in the country last year.
Fair.
And maybe we look back at the end of the season and say Mississippi State's just improved. Like, they're not the worst team in the SEC, and that wasn't that bad of a loss on the road. And so I think it's like the Utah-Texas Tech game where if you look at two teams, they're pretty evenly matched, a really good offense, a porous defense, and it's going to be pointsy. You just give the advantage to the home team and see if the betting public moves the line one way or the other.
Are you giving the advantage to the home team? Are you taking Baylor spread here?
I think I'm leaning Arizona State.
Me too.
For the same reason I would take Tech in the points. It feels like if Baylor was a plus 2.5, I would take Baylor. I'm going to take the underdog here because I think both teams are very evenly matched. And as I mentioned earlier, I have no faith in the Baylor defense to get a stop when they need to. And so whoever has the ball last is probably going to win this football game. And I'm going to take the points in a type of football game that I think it's going to be.
But also, do you have faith Arizona State's defense can stop Baylor?
No,
they need to, because last time we saw them versus Mississippi State, they were throwing deep posts on them like over and over and over, zero adjustment.
Yeah, if I'm betting this game, it's the total. Like I'm going over early in the week before this climbs to 65, 66.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree with that for sure. Okay, now let's move on to a completely different type of offense in the Army Black Knights, because North Texas is traveling up to West Point this Saturday, 11 a.m. on CBS Sports Network. Army is favored by 1.5 points. And Craven, there is part of me that fears we might have crowned the North Texas defense as fixed and hung the banner like a week too early, because Army is the true test of can you stop the run, because they're going to run it down your throat. And yes, that game last week was incredible. The 5 turnovers, like props to North Texas defense, but also I think Washington State stinks really bad.
Yeah, I've taken a lot of social media heat this weekend for not having North Texas above Texas State while the Bobcats lost to Arizona State. And the Mean Green absolutely crushed Washington State. One of the more impressive performances I can remember for North Texas football. Like, since I've been covering them, that was the biggest and best that they've looked against a quality opponent. So hats off to the Mean Green. Rubber meets the road this week. If you can go on the road and have that type of performance, and you don't have to blow out Army, but if you can go on the road and beat Army and look competent defensively, it's like, holy cow, this is an American Conference Athletic Championship looking squad. Or to your point, they could be exposed as maybe we crown them a little too much. And the defensive improvements have been mostly because of the opponent and not necessarily anything in-house at North Texas. I think the truth is in between. I don't think that they're as great of a football team as that Washington State score would suggest. I think that says more about what Washington State is. We saw what Oregon State has been as well. Like, those two Pac-12 teams aren't what they used to be and aren't what the helmets would suggest. But this is a big, big game for North Texas, for perception nationally as a G5 program. I think for their fan base and just kind of galvanizing behind them. But what's ironic is, North Texas defense was really crappy last year, but they played pretty good against Army. It was like that 14-3, all those red zone turnovers kind of cost North.
Do you think
Texas.
Skylar Cassidy's reaching out to Matt Capone to ask for advice for North Texas DC on this game?
I don't. No, I don't think so. That's pretty funny though. I think I'm leaning North Texas. Like maybe that's the famous last words, and I'm jinxing the mean green here. Typically, when I've sold North Texas, they've done well, and when I start to buy in, they typically collapse. But I don't think Army's as good as they were last year. They don't have a Bryson Daly to just go take over the football game. I know this one means a lot for this program and for this coaching staff. If you can start 4-0, the schedule opens up a little bit for you. You don't have Memphis. You don't have Tulane. I think the trajectory of this thing kind of goes to the moon if they're able to go on the road and win this one.
You want to hear the most Army stat ever? Army quarterback Dwayne Coleman leads the team with 7 for 12 passing, 129 yards, and 2 interceptions through 2 games. They've only played 2 games. But then Army quarterback Cale Helms, another quarterback, leads the team in rushing with 49 carries for 161 yards and 3 touchdowns. Beautiful.
Yeah. North Texas plays 12 games in the regular season. 3 of them are against option teams. So this is kind of their first test because they also play Navy and they also play Rice. And so we're going to find out a lot about the Mean Green and what they're able to do against this type of offense, because we're going to see it again. Not that Rice runs the same type of option, but obviously has some principles in it.
Well, Army is also just hard to figure out because week 1 they lose to Tarleton State 30-27, an FCS opponent. And then the next week they beat Kansas State 24-21. Now, Kansas State might be horrible this year. I mean, they've gotten off to a horrendous start, but still, like one huge upset, one big upset going the wrong way. One choke, you could say.
Yeah, Tarleton, top 5 team in the FCS.
Woo! Hey, now.
I think they're 4th in the latest poll, just kind of behind those Dakota schools that are always up there. But they're a true national championship contender. The Texans are really, really good.
Another just wow stat, have my jaw on the floor. North Texas is first in the American Conference, allowing 232.3 yards per game right now. First in total defense. Unbelievable.
Yeah, complementary football has arrived to Denton, America. And it turns out if Eric Morris's potent offense has a competent defense on the other side of the ball, North Texas is pretty good at football. Imagine that.
All right, let's breeze through some of these games we have rounding out the state. Let's go number 8, Texas for Sam Houston, 7 p.m. on SEC Network. Texas is minus 41.5, and I have no confidence at all that Texas can score 42 points. So this is assuming Sam Houston doesn't score at all, which maybe, honestly, maybe Sam Houston doesn't score against this Texas defense.
Yeah, I would like to thank Vegas for not catching up to Texas's offensive woes, because the line against UTEP last week was pretty similar, and it was like Texas hasn't scored 40 points, much less covering a spread of 40. So I appreciate that free vacation that Vegas was able to give us gambling folk out there. Sam Houston's not as good at UTEP as UTEP. I think the Miners are a better football team. Obviously, Sam Houston 0-3. They've lost all 3 by 17 points. And not against great football teams, right? One against UNLV,
Western Kentucky.
Hawaii, Western Kentucky. So if Arch Manning is ever going to have a get right game, it feels like this is the one. And then on the flip side, the Texas defense versus the Sam Houston offense is a snuff film. Like it should be illegal to put on television.
If Hunter Watson has a better quarterback rating than Arch Manning at the end of this game, the sky is falling. Like, all due respect, Hunter Watson.
Hunter Watson might die because he doesn't know how to not do Hunter Watson things. Like, they had a bye week this week. They had a bye in week 3. They had played Hawaii in week 2, and he didn't play. He kind of dressed out in the last 3 minutes and kind of a weird deal. And so if he's not completely healthy, I wonder if this is one of those that like Phil Longo saves him from himself, because if he's kind of dinged up going into this game, like he's going to be even more dinged up because I don't think Hunter Watson can help himself. I think Hunter Watson, to his credit, I love this about Hunter Watson. I think he can only play one way. And playing that one way against this Texas defense feels akin to suicide. Like, it just feels like not a safe bet. So I'm worried about Sam Houston. Just like UTEP last week, I think the goal here is to not get embarrassed and to emerge relatively healthy. That's a win for Sam Houston. And for the Texas side, you just want to see the offense excel. Like, I think that's all you want, is to see them score 45 points and Arch Manning throw for 350 yards. Like, that would be big time for the Longhorns.
Yeah. Hunter Watson, it's going to be like Russell Crowe and Gladiator out there on Saturday night. It's like in the Roman Coliseum.
Yeah.
Just headbutting Anthony Hill.
Right.
In the middle of the line of scrimmage.
And LaFowl and Jelani McDonald, like, it just, the line of it doesn't exist. Like, Texas is, I don't know if Texas is a national title contender anymore because of how bad the offense is, but I have no doubts about how good that defense is. And you couple that with how bad Sam Houston's offense has been. I don't think the Bearcats move the ball.
Mm-mm. Yeah, it'll be a struggle to get past the 50-yard line in this game, I think.
Because UTEP moved the ball a little bit. Like, there was some competence there. I don't see how that happens for the Bearcats, but I could be wrong.
All right, a little more of an even contest here. Rice versus Charlotte. This is 6:30 p.m. on a Thursday night football on ESPN, primetime slot here. Huge game for Rice, I should say. Also, I did not get the line on this game for some reason.
I think Rice is favored by 4.5 is what I saw.
Sounds right.
When it first came out.
It is now down to -2.5.
-2.5, and Rice is on the road. So to be favored on the road, I think says a little bit of something. If Rice is going to make it to a bowl game, which has been Scott Abel's kind of stated goal since he took over the Owls, this is the type of win you need to get. You can go to 3-1 with wins over Louisiana, Prairie View A&M. You've won a big game on the road already at Louisiana, so that should be in your favor. But you still have Charlotte, you still have FAU, you still have UConn, UAB. Those feel like the winnable games. Navy at UTSA, Memphis, North Texas, USF. Those feel like tough ones. If the Owls are going to do it, they need to do it early in the year. This feels like a must-win's an exaggeration for a first-year coach. But in terms of making to a bowl game and kind of achieving what they wanted to do in year one under Abel, this feels like the type of game you have to go win.
It's a must-win for your stated goal, not must-win for your tenure, I would say.
Right.
It's also a case of when a stoppable force meets a movable object, because Rice is last in the American with 70 passing yards a game, and Charlotte is last in the American, allowing 323 passing yards per game.
Chase Jenkins special. Maybe we see some passing going on here with the Owls. I still think it'll be about 85-15 run pass.
I wouldn't have it any other way. All right. Staying in the American, UTSA versus Colorado State, 8:30 p.m. on FS1. UTSA is favored by 4.5, and this one's got to have it. Got to have this one.
Yeah, this one feels like kind of a make or break for this UTSA football team. The vibes are low, especially within the fan base. You can be a victim of your own success, and Traylor had so much of it right away, especially from 2021 through 2023. That becomes the floor. People just expect you to win 10 games and to play for conference championships. And when you're not, they want expectation, or they want an explanation. And typically the ones that are just realistic, which are, it's really hard to sustain that level of success anywhere, much less at a G5 program in the middle of the portal and this revenue share era. Like, there was going to be a natural step back. I remember telling UTSA fans back then, like, these are the good times. Remember this, because you're going to get spoiled and you're going to act like you're too good to win 7 games when you're not at all too good to win 7 games. I think this is just life for UTSA right now. But to stay bowl eligible and to stay an American kind of contender, dark horse contender, these are the type of football games that you have to go win. If you start 0-3 against FBS opponents, there's going to be legitimate questions about this coaching staff and the loyalty to the coordinators and the loyalty to the players on the roster and kind of what Traylor is doing. Because as we talk about all the time, this sport is only as fun as it is miserable for your rivals. And for a Traylor's era, they have dominated their rivals. They have been the better program to North Texas. They have been the better program to Texas State. You look up right now on September 15th when we're recording this, and UTSA is third in that line. and the fan base isn't happy about it, rightfully so.
I love that analogy you just gave about like knowing you're in the good times before you've left them. Like it feels like UTSA fans are Andy Bernard right now, the last season of The Office, and like Frank Harris, Michael Scott left in season 7, and they're like, damn, like I wish we knew we were in the good times when we had them.
Yeah, I think it's harder than ever to build a G5 program, specifically the way Jeff Traylor wants to build a program, and you're just never going to have 10-win seasons in perpetuity. Like there's going to be some ups, there's going to be some downs. This was probably predictable, but that doesn't make it any better for the fan base. Like that like we don't have jobs because the fans are like, well, we'll check back in a year or two. Like it's just what happened. Like, it's short for fanatic for a reason. Like there is an obvious culture in San Antonio about winning, from the Spurs to the Roadrunners. It's one of those cities that really supports winners and kind of jumps off ship when it's not. And right now it's not. And this is the type of win that can reel them back in a little bit. But if you go and you lose that game, then the sky is falling.
Yeah, you mentioned UTSA comparing themselves right now to Texas State. The Bobcats play Nichols 7 p.m. on ESPN Plus Saturday night. I got nothing for this game.
Yeah, go win this one. Nichols not awful. They beat UIW in the first game of the season, then they haven't won since. So maybe that's more about the Cardinals than Nichols. First-year head coach there. This is a get-right game for Brad Jackson, who looked like a freshman quarterback for the first time last week against Arizona State.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, if I had a Nichols for every time this team played a Texas team, I'd have 2 Nichols because they played TCU last year, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah. You'd have a dime.
Okay, last game on the docket here. UTEP versus Louisiana Monroe, Saturday, 8 p.m. on ESPN Plus. UTEP favored by 4.5. It felt like the Texas game was kind of best case scenario for UTEP last week because they weren't going to win that game until like 4 guys got injured in the third quarter simultaneously.
Yeah, we'll see how healthy they are going into this one. That's always the worry. The nice part about playing at Texas is the experience. If you're playing college football and you can talk about till you die that you played at DKR in front of 100,000 people, like a really cool experience. You also get a pretty fat check for doing it. The negative is it can make you a mash unit. That happened to UTSA a couple of years ago. UTEP suffered a few injuries. So this feels like, this may be hyperbolic, this feels like the biggest game of the Scotty Walden era so far. Because if you want to climb into respectability in Conference USA, it's beating these type of teams. I know Louisiana Monroe is a Sun Belt team, but they're kind of peers, right? Like they're both not the greatest programs historically of all time, relatively new coaches trying to climb the ladder and become respectable. And you do that by getting to bowl games and putting down these markers. The next 2 games for UTEP feel very important. They got ULM at home this week. They got La Tech at home next week. They need to win at least one of those games to kind of keep that momentum going. And as we've talked about, the city of El Paso wants to support this team. They just want to support this team that's winning. And if you can have a big environment on a Saturday night against another FBS team, this isn't UT Martin. If you can go and win this game, it's like, oh, okay, there's the growth from year 1 to year 2 that you're looking for.
I watched the Texas versus UTEP game with my grandparents, and their first introduction to Scotty Walden was very funny. They were getting a kid. They're like, what? Why is he so hyper? Like he's grandma and grandpa. Like that's all the time.
Yeah, that is who he is.
Let me show you this video of him at the basketball game with his chest painted.
Yep.
Let me strap in for this one. Is Kenny Odom okay? What's the update on it? It didn't look very good.
Yeah, so we're recording this Monday afternoon. I think we'll know more by Tuesday at the end of the day as he gets evaluated and see kind of how he's dealing with it after the weekend. I guess if I had to put money on it, he doesn't play against ULM in hopes that he comes back against Conference USA.
Because that's huge if he's not playing.
Yeah, huge for sure.
And then I know they had a couple linebackers go out, Garrett Hawkins, Joshua Rudolph. So big time monitoring the injury report this week for UTEP. Because you're right. It is. I think it's the biggest game of the Scotty Walden tenure too.
Yep.
All right. Well, that's going to wrap it up for a preview of a seismic week 4. I'm really excited for this weekend of college football, guys. Craven, any closing thoughts before we get on out of here?
No, excited to talk about the Skillet here in a second. SMU, TCU, and what that's going to mean for both of those programs. A huge game. Just as we said at the very beginning here, just a very show me type week in the state of Texas. That picture is cloudy through 3 weeks. I think after this fourth week, it's going to be a lot clearer of who the good teams are, who the bad teams are, what we were right about going into the season, what maybe we were wrong about going into the season. So excited to kind of see it and get that fourth data point on a lot of these football teams.
And then, guys, as promised, we got our Iron Skillet preview, TCU versus SMU, welcoming on Billy Embody with On 3, covers SMU, and Jamie Plunkett, 247 Sports, covers TCU. Now, enjoy our conversation with those guys. It was a lot of fun, and we'll see y'all next week. Hello, and welcome in to the Dave Campbell's College Football Podcast. Got a very special edition for y'all today. Of course, your regulars are here. I am host Carter Yates. That is senior college writer Mike Craven. But we also welcome on Jamie Plunkett, who covers TCU for the Horned Frogs Blitz and 247 Sports, also part of the DCTF College Podcast Network. And then Billy Embody, who covers SMU for On 3. And we have these guys on for a friendly debate before the Iron Skillet this Saturday, the last Iron Skillet for now, before it goes on pause. This is going to be a friendly debate, guys, but why don't we just start here with the last Iron Skillet? What are your thoughts on this game going away?
It's disappointing, right? We're in an era of college athletics where rivalry is disappearing all over the country, and we're fortunate enough to have seen a couple come back in Texas and Texas A&M being an example, West Virginia Pitt being another example. Some sustain despite conference differences like Iowa and Iowa State, but TCU and SMU couldn't figure out a new deal. That is largely because of TCU's attempts to kind of change the agreement moving forward. My understanding is that they wanted a 2-for-1 rather than a straight 1-for-1. I don't know what Billy's impression was from the SMU side, but look, it's disappointing at the end of the day. These are two schools that need to play each other. They're 45 minutes apart. They've played over 100 games against each other, and college football is better when you play your rivals. So I'm a little disappointed that this game is ending, but it's going to be a really fun final Iron Skillet here on Saturday.
Billy, what are your thoughts on it?
I think if Sonny Dykes isn't the coach, this thing's still on. I mean, I think that, the return, which Sonny Dykes won the first one when he came back to Dallas, and kudos to them for being ready to go. But, it was pretty nasty, as one would expect. I think Sonny kind of miscalculated, and not that he would change what he did in leaving SMU for TCU, but I think he miscalculated how much hate he was going to get. I think he was going to, thought like it was just going to be fine. And, oh, thanks for what you did. We get it. You're leaving a group of 5 at the time for a Power 4 school, or Power 5 at the time school. And that's just not where this rivalry was. And I think for me, now that both schools are in Power 4 conferences, and both schools need, in the position that both are in, being in the Big 12 and the ACC, you need as much kind of attention on your programs, and playing this type of a rivalry game can help from a national perspective. People can talk about over 100 years of playing this game instead of, if Bill Belichick isn't the coach at North Carolina, TCU UNC is not necessarily a huge, game like it was with its own special show and things like that. And you play Abilene Christian, and the whole thing was just weird, because I remember the press conference right before it got canceled at Texas Coaches Convention, and Sonny was kind of making fun of Rutgers and USC playing each other. And then a couple weeks later, it comes out TCU is going to cancel the series. So, I just think it's just all in TCU's court as far as why it's being canceled. I think SMU would like it to be a 1-for-1. I don't think there's any doubt about that. I think now that both schools are Power 4 schools, that should be what it is. And it should be similar to a UNC Duke, where they're 45 minutes down the road, but it'd be the football version. It's Texas. It's college football in Texas, and Texas high school football. Rivalries matter, especially being cross town. So give the fan bases, a local game to come and watch that means something and has history. Just doesn't make sense to me.
It made more sense to me when SMU was still a G5 program.
Yep. Knew exactly where TCU was coming from.
Because for most of my life, it was a a lose-lose for TCU, right? Like if you lose to SMU, you get crushed for losing to SMU. You beat SMU. That doesn't do anything on the recruiting trail for you. What I find most disappointing is right when this rivalry was about to get good again, it's going away. And to Billy's point, when you're not in the SEC and you're not in the Big Ten, you need as much limelight as you can get. And you also need feathers in your cap to get into the playoff. And it's a bummer that as this game was about to explode to where beating SMU was a big deal, and you can use it in recruiting and you can use it getting into the college football playoff. It was going to be on the same footing again. And I think that stinks that it's going away as soon as that was true.
And I'll add one more thing, because the whole Texas coaches convention, when Sonny talked about this rivalry, sticks in my head because I remember being there. Craven, you were there. Carter, you were there. The taking care of your fans and your season ticket holders was another point that Sonny made, which again, you're playing. I mean, some of the games are like Arkansas State, Abilene Christian, things like that. They should really just offer those games for $5 a head. I mean, that doesn't do anything, and you don't have to you don't have to get on a plane. You don't have to pay for a hotel. You don't have to do all these things. I mean, I went to Raleigh last year for SMU Duke. It's expensive to go all the way out there. Like how, give them a local game where your alumni can host all sorts of events around it. It could be a week-long thing, and you don't even have to call it homecoming or family weekend. So anyway.
Yeah, I think some of that could be resolved too, just with the Big 12's own kind of scheduling challenges that they have. You look at a school like Texas Tech this year is only playing one other team from the state, and there are 3 other teams from the state in the league. Just things like that could go a long way to resolving some of these interstate rivalries as well, because it does make sense that Tech's only playing one game against another Texas school this year, and that game is a road game. Lubbock doesn't host another school from Texas this year, and that makes no sense to me. But another aspect from TCU's perspective is they want 7 home games every year, and part of the way to get to that is to get out of some of these longer agreements with other schools, and the one that they had on the table at that point was SMU, and so. They ran into a situation last season in 24 where both of their bigger non-conference games were on the road. They knew they didn't want to be in a situation like that again. And this was the decision that they thought was best to try and get closer to that end result of 7 home games a year. So
what are your guys' faith that this game comes back in the not 30 years from now, but maybe 5 years from now? Or is it just about who's the head coach at TCU, and we'll have that discussion when Sonny's not there?
Oh, go ahead, Billy.
No, sorry. Does this game get turned back on when they're both in the Big Ten? Yeah,
there you go. Right. There it is. Yes.
Right. When the Super League comes about.
Absolutely. Yeah. Love that. No, I think the reality is that there's a new athletic director and a new university president at both schools now since this decision was made. So I think that there's a really good opportunity for those two groups to come together and have a conversation about how to bring this game back in the near future. Now, when you ask folks around TCU, that's not necessarily on the radar yet. But again, the AD is just 9 months in, the new chancellor's 6 months in. And so you get further down the road of their tenure, I think you can see a good likelihood that this game could come back on the table again.
I agree.
So no more talking about what we're missing out on in the next couple of years. Let's talk about what we got this Saturday coming in. Huge game, the Iron Skillet, one of the best rivalries in Texas. Can y'all each give a side where you think the team you cover has a distinct advantage over the other team?
Go for it.
Yeah, I think run game right now for SMU. I mean, TJ Harden looks like a really, really talented, productive, physical runner. And then they've got Dramico Green, Chris Johnson Jr., Derek McFall. I think the run game for SMU is something that can really, really click. I think distinct advantage is the key word. Like, you can make the argument Kevin Jennings is a better quarterback. You can make the argument Josh Hoover's a better quarterback, depending on, their style and what offense you're in and all of those things. I mean, both are producing at a high level, but SMU's run game, I think, is something that there's a lot of confidence in to be able to get it done on Saturday in Fort Worth.
Yeah, I think I'd probably say TCU's defensive line is largely improved this year, and watching SMU last week and against Baylor, those two games I've checked in on with the Mustangs this year, didn't look like they were generating as much pressure as they have in past years, especially against that Baylor front. Sawyer Robertson had a lot of time back there to throw the ball. So TCU's reconstructed defensive line, I think, has a really good opportunity to kind of step up and show out like it did against North Carolina in week 1. You've got a lot of talent up and down that line that I think is really looking forward to this football game.
So Craven, that sounds like strength on strength there then.
Yeah, it's going to be a fascinating game. I think both of these teams have some question marks that we'll learn a lot more about going in. Do y'all think, like, SMU's already been pushed? Overtime game against Baylor, back and forth affair. I don't think North Carolina is very good. Do you think there's an advantage to already have played in a few of those games for SMU, or at least one of those games for SMU compared to TCU? And Jamie, just your thoughts on only having 2 games going into this one, and it's kind of a weird scheduling deal early on.
Yeah. I think the schedule is really odd, having only had 2 games so far. Kansas State's already played 4, right? And so it's really interesting to be in this position for TCU. I think the benefit is health, frankly. They haven't been very banged up. They lost a couple guys to some bumps and bruises against Abilene Christian. Those guys were held out for precautionary reasons. No one's expected to miss this game on Saturday. But I think that this is going to be a really fun first true test for the Frogs, and we'll see how their offseason conditioning is paid off come fourth quarter when things are probably still pretty close and guys are still getting after it, because TCU has not experienced that yet this year.
Yeah, I think, for SMU, having gone through what they went through against Baylor, I mean, up 14 with 6 minutes left, I don't think that there's been a game in the Rhett Lashley era that's been like that, where they've just blown it at the end. Truthfully, they really haven't, been up big like that in the final minutes and lost. And I don't think they responded well at all going up to Missouri State. Weird environment there, 18,000 strong. It was packed, but it's, sleepy stadium still. And they let that Baylor game beat them, at least in the first quarter. And they didn't look particularly good. And so they've got a lot of work to do to kind of put all 3 games that they've already played behind them. And to Jamie's point about health, SMU's not healthy. Jordan Hudson, I don't necessarily expect him to play. I mean, who knows? But it's kind of probably a pain tolerance type of thing. But then you've got Alex Kilgore and Zakai Barker, 2 starting middle linebackers that, were hurt and held out the last 2 weeks. And, Zakai really didn't play much at all against Baylor, I think like 10 snaps or something. And you had Isaiah Smith, another edge rusher who was held out the first half of last week. Akeel Washington's another edge rusher that hasn't played yet for SMU that they were really counting on. So they got banged up on the offensive line too. This is if they can get healthy, I mean, maybe we see some changes defensively as far as like how they play, because they get their 2 starting middle backers back. But if not, TCU is going to have a chance, if SMU plays the way it did against Baylor, to put up points, and SMU is going to have to answer that and figure out how to respond. But yeah, I think it's kind of funny how different these 2 teams are in terms of what we know about them right now, because one's healthy, 2 games, you could argue at this point, I think North Carolina was, about as good of a P4 warm-up as you could get. And with Abilene Christian, that worked out well. But SMU, on the other hand, has kind of been through it with all sorts of different factors impacting this team. So it's going to be interesting.
Billy, it feels like it's been a slow start, choppy start for SMU with what you just mentioned about blowing that lead versus Baylor, the sleepy game against Missouri State. They're 125th in the nation right now in penalties. Do you feel like this is a slow start similar to last year, where they then turned it on and made it to the ACC championship and the college football playoff, or are you concerned about the slow start?
Yeah, I think there's definitely some more concern than last year. I mean, you could look at last year and say, okay, they changed quarterbacks. I felt like Kevin was the right guy for last year and to make that change and that it would work out. I think offensively, I think SMU has a chance to be better than last year. I really do. I think some of the young bloods like Jalen Cooper's been unbelievable to start out for SMU. RJ Maryland's still kind of coming back. The revamped running back room, like that group is really, really good. top to bottom versus just having Burchard last year. And the offensive line, I think, running the football wise is much improved, and their depth looks better. So there's differences on the offensive side, and then on the defensive side, there's concern. I don't think there's any doubt about that. You know, being able to get lit up by Baylor for over 400 yards passing is concerning. Now, halfway through the fourth quarter, you're looking at it and you're like, okay, 24 points against, Sawyer Robertson and what they were able to do, you're not bad, but they didn't finish. And it's a new look team, and they've got to find their leadership. They've got to find their way to finish, because we're talking about a very different game, most likely, if SMU is able to find a way to hold on, or even if Colin Rogers makes that game-winning attempt at the end of regulation. Everything looks better when you win. And at the end of the day, though, they didn't. They couldn't put it together, and they, fell apart. So it's there's concern on the defensive side of the ball. I think the offense overall is in good shape. It has not been perfect. There's been this, there's been that. There's been a lot of inconsistency, and SMU's got to find consistent performers on Saturday if they're going to pull this off.
Jamie, I know you've heard the same things from Sonny that I've heard all offseason, that this is his most talented roster, that he's got 70, 80 guys he feels like can play some football. The depth is there. It feels a lot more like 2022 in terms of culture. I've been getting crushed for not having TCU higher up in the power poll, and it's because I just don't know what they are. Like, I think the first game was more about North Carolina being bad than TCU being great. And that doesn't mean TCU can't be great or they're not great, but I just don't know that yet. From somebody who's there all the time, who watches practice, who knows these guys better than anybody, what's your confidence level that TCU is like a legit Big 12 contending type football team? Or are you still in the wait and see mode? You need to see it against a big time team first.
I think I'm like 1 foot in each of those right now. I'm kind of straddling the fence. Depth wise, I would agree with Sonny that this is the deepest team he's had since 22. And so one of the things that we've been talking about as folks who cover the team over the last 3 years is, can he build a roster like the one he inherited in 2022? And can he get the Frogs back to competing at that level? And I think he's got the roster in pretty good shape to compete for a Big 12 title, especially when you look around the league, and some of those schools that were tabbed as contenders like Arizona State and Kansas State haven't looked quite as good as people anticipated them looking. But at the same time, good teams beat bad teams, and that's what TCU did to North Carolina. They took care of business. After the first 5 minutes of the first quarter, it was really no contest. And so, yes, North Carolina was pretty bad, but I think TCU also flexed that they have the ability, when they're playing up to snuff, to be a pretty good football team. Some of the guys they went and got in the portal this offseason have made pretty immediate impacts. Kavorian Barnes, the running back from UTSA, has looked really solid. Got a little banged up against ACU, but should be all right. Jordan Dwyer has been wide receiver 1. The 1,000-yard receiver from Idaho last year has come in and not missed a beat at the P4 level, and that's been really fun to see. So I think some of the consistencies in the trenches and some of the portal guys they've added at the skill positions have really put them in a position to compete for the Big 12. And now we get to see, starting with SMU, this run of 6 more games in a row where they can go out and prove it.
Yeah, I feel like this is a huge test for both teams, and I'm curious for each of you. Is there a part of the program you're covering that you still have a big question mark about? And there's probably multiple here, but like specifically in this game, you're going to find an answer about this team. Like, is there a question mark you have that you hope gets answered this week?
Yeah, the defensive line and the secondary for SMU. And to kind of build off of that, like, you don't have your 2 middle linebackers, for basically all 3 of the first games. Kilgore went down early against East Texas A&M even. So is some of the passing lanes that quarterbacks have had against SMU a product of linebackers not getting their drops, their depth, their this, their that? Because there's windows in there that, and this is a secondary that, outside of losing Jonathan McGill and CJ Sanders, they really shouldn't have some of the windows that they have down the field, because they return a lot of the same guys, in theory, right? And there was a thought that the secondary, with a couple of the pieces that they added, would be improved. Right now, it just doesn't look like that. And so the biggest question mark I have is this pass defense, because SMU stopped the run pretty well all season long. Baylor kind of hit a couple runs late on them that really turned the tide of the game when they were trying to come back. But I mean, Baylor wasn't running the ball very well against SMU overall. before, kind of everything fell apart late. But, that might have been a product of 90 plus plays. Who knows? But for SMU, they've got to find a way to get pressure on Josh Hoover and force him into mistakes, because that was, what they were able to do in part last year was take advantage of mistakes after forcing them, all the defensive and non-offensive touchdowns that they scored. And, that game looks a little differently. There's no doubt about it. But, it's still a defense that right now, defending the passing game, has not, whether it be pass rush or secondary, has not looked the way it needs to at all. They've got to find ways to dial up pressures and get off the field in third downs. Now, Missouri State's Missouri State, but they held them to 0 for on third downs and fourth downs. So I think 0 for 13 as a whole. So good start. I think they have some things there that they can kind of build on, but they've got to figure out a way to, force Josh Hoover into some mistakes, because Josh Hoover's, been known to make some mistakes too.
Yeah, I think for TCU, interestingly enough, and this might be a little recency bias for me, but the secondary against ACU was not as clean as we expected it to be, especially when the ones were still in the game. There were a couple corners that had bad days, frankly, gave up a lot of passes that they should not have given up. Stone Earl threw his first 2 passing touchdowns of the year against TCU, which is a really not a feel good stat if you're a Horned Frog fan. But I think that if the secondary issues persist into Saturday, with what Billy said as well about SMU's challenges in their secondary, this could be a very high scoring affair with the talent at the skill positions and at quarterback for both of these football teams. The other area that I would say for TCU is they didn't run block as well as they needed to in the first 2 games. And I know that's odd to say after they ran for 250 plus yards against North Carolina, but they didn't block up nearly as well as they needed to consistently in the run game in either of these 2 games. So that's an area where if they can improve a little bit and really turn into a multifaceted offense, I think we'll see them take the next step.
If y'all could pick a player from the other team to put on to this roster, like what scares you the most? Like who are some guys that scare you on the other side if you're TCU or SMU?
Good question.
That's what I do.
Go ahead and just give me RJ Maryland for this game, please. Thank you. I would love to add him to the weapons that Hoover's throwing to.
Oh, this is Bud Clark. I think if SMU had Bud Clark, that would be a 3-headed monster at safety that they really, really need. And that's nothing against SMU safeties right now, because Ahmad Moses and Isaiah Wakobi are awesome. But SMU's defense, when they have 3, I think that's something that they're working through right now, because they could kind of manage the corners a little bit by scheme and, all of that. And maybe a defensive lineman from TCU if you're being greedy. But, man, I covered Bud Clark in high school, and the dude is just stud. I mean, just always been that guy, about his business and taking care of it. And so I like Bud Clark. So I'm over here, sticking the hand out to my guy Bud from Alexandria.
So I'll go in a similar vein then. What is something that you respect about the other program as you cover the rival? Like, what do you respect about the other program from afar?
Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead. You
first. No, please. You first.
Yeah. Please, you say something nice first. I think, when it's always interesting when a school goes through a coaching change, because they discover that the guy that just left, that maybe asked for a couple things and met some resistance, you're going to end up having to give those concessions to the next guy. And I think Rhett Lashley got a lot of what Sonny Dykes asked for at SMU. And I think that's really good for the football program and for the university to show that they are willing to step up and back a football coach and a football program, and look at where it's gotten SMU. I mean, they're coming off of a college football playoff appearance and an ACC championship appearance in the first year in the league. So I think that's a really impressive come up for SMU over the last 24, 36 months. Is the renewed investment in the program has been really impressive.
Yeah, I think the recruiting staff at TCU was awesome when I covered them at SMU, because there's still a lot of people over there. Jeff Jordan, Tyler Olker. I mean, just that whole kind of crew was just really good to me. So I always appreciate them. Kaz was great with his time. Sonny was great until kind of the end. When he was just kind of covering a little bit there. he didn't go full Chad Morris and tell me he was going to be the SMU coach the next day, but it was pretty close. But no, Jeff Jordan, Tyler Olker, they do an awesome job. They work their tails off to build this roster and put it all together. I mean, they've done a really nice job, because I think, when I look at TCU, leaving the Gary Patterson era to what Sonny is trying to, build and build off of from what they did in the first year, man, it's just kind of night and day as far as I feel like how they have really approached the portal and kind of how they've approached roster building. And it's taken a minute to maybe get them back to where they were, because so many things came together for that national championship appearance run, in my opinion. But like, I have a lot of trust in Jeff and Tyler and all of them, that when they, put some pieces together, it means those guys can generally play. I think there's some maybe evals they probably want back, whether it be health related for guys or things like that. But, as far as scouting players and guys that fit what they want to do, they do a really good job of that. So
can't wait to clip Billy saying Sonny was great and then just stop it.
You can turn we could have a whole separate podcast about that.
I feel like we know the stars, right? Josh Hoover versus Kevin Jennings, Romello Brinston, versus Jordan Dwyer. You mentioned Bud Clark and Naquobia. Like, I feel like those guys are known. What is an X factor that SMU or TCU need, whether it be a player or a part of the game that they're going to need to win on Saturday?
I'll go first, since Jamie went first last time. Isaiah Smith or Cam Robertson, really the entire defensive line, but Isaiah Robertson, Cam Robertson, one of them has to come off the edge and be the type of player that they've kind of hoped for them to be over the last couple of years, and that they've shown flashes. Like, Isaiah Smith is really, really athletic. Cam Robertson kind of has that nice combination of size and speed and athleticism. And both of these guys don't have, an Elijah Roberts over them, or, with Turbo, Isaiah Smith working with Jafari Harvey. They don't have that like difference maker 5th year, 6th year type of player next to them. It's their time. And both of them have shown flashes this year, but they haven't lived up to where they need to be right now. And if one of or both of them has a huge game getting after Josh Hoover, particularly in critical situations and getting off the field, they can have a very different experience, I think, than what we all watched against Baylor, trying to defend the pass.
I think I'll go one guy on each side of the ball. The first one being linebacker Caleb Elarms-Orr for TCU. Billy mentioned earlier in the show that the SMU run game has been really productive so far this season, and if TCU wants to slow that down, his run fits are going to be really important to doing that. And so Caleb's a guy who transferred in from Cal, chose TCU over Ohio State, and decided that he really wanted to play for Andy Avalos, and then got here last year and didn't see the reps that maybe he was expecting right away. Had some good patience and has been a starter through the first 2 weeks of the season this year, and has a chance to be a really productive guy at that second level of the Avalos defense. On the other side, it's a guy who had a really good week last week, and I know all three of y'all know who I'm going to talk about. It's Ed Small, man. This wide receiver out of Austin, Texas, Big 12 Freshman of the Week, had 6 catches for 45 yards and 2 touchdowns. Got his opportunity because Jordan Bailey got banged up on the opening kickoff and couldn't come back into the football game. And I think, we saw a lot of him this fall. He has meshed really quickly with Hoover and with the backup Ken Seals, and he showed out in his first opportunity. So he provides that slot option that can be really productive when a secondary has to pay attention to guys like Jordan Dwyer and Eric McAllister. So look for Ed Small maybe to get some more reps against SMU and hopefully flash just like he did on Saturday.
So we love rivalry games because the stakes are always so high. And I feel like the stakes are especially high this year because it's the last one for now. Which team has more to lose on Saturday?
Gosh.
It's a must win, but it's also a can't lose for both teams. You know what I mean?
Probably Sonny, right? I mean,
yeah.
Not like, off the board, Sonny Dykes.
I mean, I just think like after college football playoff appearance and kind of where SMU had been, I think this season SMU has more to lose. Like as far as overall, probably Sonny.
That's fair.
If that makes sense.
Yeah, I
That's
can
fair.
get down with that. Not having a loss yet on your ledger, I think that gives TCU a little bit more leeway heading into this game.
Right.
And it being a non-conference game doesn't really impact long-term things this season. But if you're the school that initiated the conversations that resulted in the rivalry not being rescheduled beyond this year, I think it's pretty important for you to come away from the final game with a win, just for morale purposes more than anything else.
Ask Oklahoma.
Right.
I think I would land on SMU the team, but TCU the program.
Yep.
Yeah.
Agreed.
Yeah.
Is how I would go with that. All right, before we let you guys get out of here, I'm a gambling man. I have to ask for your predictions. How does this one go on Saturday?
Go for it, Billy.
Yeah, I mean, we're both probably picking the programs we cover. I think SMU in this current era of their football program has done really well when TCU is the favorite, when SMU's backs are kind of against the wall in this rivalry, save for Rhett's first year. That was kind of first. What year was that when Preston Stone went into Carter? I guess that would have been Rhett's first year. 23.
Rhett's first year was 22, wasn't it?
Yeah, his first year was 22, so they weren't really expecting too much in a sense from kind of changing over the roster. And of course, we found out what TCU was all about. But TCU being the heavy favorite in this one when SMU's been good has kind of, I think, lately not necessarily been a good sign at times. But I don't know. I think SMU's the big question that I have is, can they put all of the consistently good play, the good play that they've had together? And this is where I struggle picking this game, because I think SMU has a ton of talent, but they haven't really put it together. I just think they come away with it. I think they cover and keep it close, but I think SMU probably wins by 4. I just think their run game, it just seems like a very similar team that has been able to run the ball on TCU at times in the past. And this offensive line has played really well. They haven't gotten the credit that they've deserved because of some of the choppiness offensively at times with some turnovers, but I think they're going to be able to run the ball and control the clock. And they jumped out against Baylor. They were up by 14 in the fourth quarter. I mean, this isn't a team that got shellacked by Baylor. This is a team that was up twice by double digits and just couldn't finish. So I think this game, they learned their lesson and they finished, they hold on.
I feel about TCU, it seems the same way that you feel about SMU, and that it's going to be really cool to see if they can finally put it all together. And I think that this is a game TCU, the players remember last year's game, and they remember the mistakes that they made. They remember their head coach got ejected. They remember the feeling that they felt after that contest. They remember that Rhett Lashley, when asked why he ran a flea flicker late in the game, said it's TCU. That's what you do, and all the victory laps that SMU took, and rightfully so, because TCU's done that in the past as well. So I think that, while TCU will say that this is just another game at media on Tuesday, we all know that it isn't, and that they have that taste in their mouth from 2024. This is a better team than last year's team for TCU. I think they're improved pretty much across the board, especially at some places that were really weaknesses for them last year, running the ball and run defense. And it's the last Skillet game in the Carter. You get to host it, which I think is going to be a benefit for TCU. I think TCU's offensive efficiency so far this year has been impressive, and against a banged up SMU defense, I think that will continue on Saturday. They've scored 10 touchdowns in 15 drives, scored 13 drives of those 15 with the ones on the field over the first 2 games. I think that continues, and I think that kind of leads the way for TCU in a game that might get kind of high scoring, and that the Frogs will pull away. I don't know if they covered the opening line was 6.5. I think it's down to 4. I think
Did it drop? Wow.
I think it's dropped down to 4, and I think TCU
that was
covers
quick.
that 4.
It was 7 this morning.
Was it really?
Yeah.
A couple of sharps came in on SMU.
So
Raven backing up his truck.
I won't mention any names, but there's some people that bet from Texas that moves lines a few times. So.
Is one of them on the screen right now?
Yeah, no comment. I can't. There's state laws. I can't comment on any of that kind of stuff.
So picking different teams to win, but can we at least agree on the over hitting on this one?
I mean, when I'm confident in an over like this, it's definitely going to go under. But
yeah. It's probably 17-13.
Yeah. But both defenses, will kind of be concerned about, the pass secondary on both, like we talked about, and of course it'll be like 24-21 or something like that. Because
I think it's going to look like Texas State UTSA, where it was really slow moving early on, kind of a boxing match where they're feeling each other out. And you're like, maybe this isn't going to be high scoring like we thought. And then there's like 80 points scored to the next 3 quarters. That is how I envision this thing going. But it's going to be a great game. Y'all have a lot of fun in that Carter press box. Enjoy the pizza after the game. And, don't get in too many fights. No.